I was checking out Instagram and everything. So obviously coaching and obviously,
Mhm.
dudes that were once athletic and no more is kind of the main
Yeah.
goal. So, love that. Obviously being in the space and everything like that. That's definitely a
Mhm.
market. I could see a lot of hurdles handling guys that used to be good and not aren't good anymore though, huh?
There are some, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, there's like two different paths I feel like it seems to take. I mean, people either end up like myself where like they just go into something that maintains their fitness and maybe a little bit of athleticism, and then there's the alternate where they, maybe they're burnt out and they're like, I'm going to take some time off, and the next thing they know, it's like 5 years and they're, have a desk job or
Yeah.
something, and um, so it depends. Like some people are, they kind of like have an idea of what it should look like because they were in that, place before. Like a lot of my former teammates like would never reach out to me for help because they're like, I've been fit, I can do it
Yeah.
myself. Then there's other people that they're like, sports, once I left sports, my all my organization structure went out the window. I need it. And then that's when they
Okay.
come to me.
So, on in that vein and just kind of jumping into it, if you will, what's like what is your
Yeah.
background? You mentioned your teammates. Like what sports did you play, and what did you do that got you to kind of where you're at today and helping these ex athletes get their athletic body back?
Yeah. I played soccer my whole life. I did play baseball and basketball for a little bit, and then I doubled down on soccer at age like 14. I was a goalkeeper. I pretty much the entire time. I mean, that was the position that I like chose to do, which was not maybe not the best idea because like I was told I was going to be tall. I'm actually 5'7". Goalkeepers are generally like
Okay.
6'3". But it worked out for me just fine. So I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, played there for 4 years, and then I went to Westchester University on the other side of the state, Division II, for my 5th year. Went to a national championship with them, which was actually hosted in Pittsburgh, which was crazy. Um, and then after that, I went straight into coaching. Like I was doing here in Pittsburgh, we have the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, which is our professional team. There's an academy. I started coaching the goalkeepers within that academy as a freshman at Pitt, and then from there, just kept coaching because it was easy. It was a job. I haven't had like a real job since I was probably a senior in high school. Um, and then after I graduated college, I came back to Pittsburgh, was with the Riverhounds as assistant director of goalkeeping. I went to Virginia Tech in January of 2020 to be a volunteer assistant with their men's team. March 2020 got sent home because of the pandemic. And then what was it? I think later that year I joined the Riverhounds professional team. So I was a pro coach at age 25. And then after that, I was with Pitt for a brief amount of time. I started my business in 2020, right after I got sent home from Virginia Tech. So I've been coaching for a long time, probably since I was 16. And then fitness was always the thing that I knew I enjoyed. I found that in college. And then I kind of always figured I'd do something with it. I just didn't know what that
Sure.
was going to be. Um, and then it wasn't until 2020, I was on my way home from Philadelphia visiting some teammates, and I was listening to a podcast, Barbell
Yep.
Shrugged. You familiar? So I was listening to that, and there was a guy,
Hmm.
John Goodman, on he was a guest on the episode. He was talking about how all these coaches and gym owners were taking their business online during the pandemic, and I was like, that's the thing. And so I from there went home, went straight to work on putting together an online coaching business, and then 5 years later, here
Okay.
I am.
Super cool. So it's interesting. I went to college for engineering and I was that nerd kid that tried to be athletic to an extent. Although in
Okay.
like middle school and high school, I was pretty good. Like, presidential fitness tests, like all those things, always did
Mm,
well at them. I played sports, hockey, football, things like that through high school, but sports and athleticism was never like my die hard thing. Like it wasn't in me.
mm-hmm.
I didn't fall in love with fitness until more so after college, when I went to go train for a state fire exam, and you just got to be in shape. And it had been 3 years
Sure.
of no organized sports, college, being a nerd going to engineering school, and that doesn't do any wonders on the body by any stretch. So, but all right, well, cool, man. So when we talk here, like I always love to bring up kind of the three big pillars, and fitness and health is definitely a main one. And today it is very much a mainstay in my life, my house, my entire family. But, wealth and relationships are also those other three big pillars. So before we
Hmm.
jump down the fitness road, because I see you and I putting our capes on and just getting ready to go hard on
Yeah, yeah.
protein and steps and water and sleep. Um, let's dive into those other two first. So relationships is always one of those things that I find intriguing, especially, I have no more friends from like high school or younger. I have one or two friends from college. Majority of my friends are newer people and usually work acquaintances. Talk to me about that side of things of your life, especially as an online coach where sometimes I know it can get a little bit like lonely and you're on your island and you're not getting to work with
Mm,
somebody or work with people. Often your clients tend to become your people.
yeah. That is an interesting thought, and I do feel that at times. Now, I will say I found recently that I bought a house in July, and
Congrats.
previously I was living in a thank you. I was living in apartments before that, and there's a very different like vibe to being in an apartment versus a house, right? Like you're in an apartment and you have your own place, but you can like there's it's like college. You can just see people. Um, and now being in this house, I mean, it's great and all, but like I'm by myself unless I choose
Yep.
to leave, right? Um, and a big part of that was, I mean, what I had to change for a long time. I was working out by myself. I was writing my own programming because I was like, I'm a coach. I can do it for myself, right? And then after a while, I was like, maybe I should do what my clients do and outsource it to somebody else. Then I joined a CrossFit gym that's about 10 blocks down from my house, and it's been it's been massive in the sense of like having
Yep.
community again, because that's a big part of CrossFit, obviously. And I hadn't been a part of a gym ever like that. It was always I'm in the weight room with my team, or never really had a lifting partner, but either I was with my team or I was on my own. And now I have like all these other people that are kind of doing the same thing as me, and that's really cool because I didn't have that for a really really long time. But then talking about other relationships, I mean, like I'm still friends with like the same group of dudes from like as far as preschool. I mean, I've lived in Pittsburgh my entire life. I've left for a couple different brief moments, but I've never really, everyone's been here. No one really left, and that's the thing with Pittsburgh. Apparently, is like people that are born here
Born there,
stay
stay
here.
there. Okay.
Um, yeah, it's a very common thing, and I didn't really get it up until I met people that moved here, and then I started thinking like, oh wow, like everyone is still
Yeah.
here. And so I to get back to your point, I think as a when an online business is your main thing, you almost have to really make it a point to go out and like make sure you're doing stuff like socializing outside of just fitness too, which like I've had people tell me like, hey, you need a hobby that's not fitness. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, but I just don't know what that's going to be. you know
Yeah, it's definitely intriguing. One of my business partners, he has his apartment by himself and is like, we do our thing online. He's like, Steve, I never see anybody in person. I'm like, you need to get outside, like go
Yeah, it's
somewhere,
not good.
like go say hi to a
Yeah.
human, not behind a screen. So I
Yeah.
know it gets taxing, but so you bought a house. That's exciting. That's an easy like
Hmm.
segue into the wealth side of things real
It
quick.
is. Hmm.
What's how'd that process go? Like how's it feel to be a homeowner?
Oh, um, I don't know. I don't really think about it all that much. Like it was one of those things where I to go back, like when I was 24, so I'm 29 now. When I was 24 is when I really started learning about like money. Like for a long time, it was never something that I thought that much about because I was always like, I just need enough, whatever. And then you start to like learn about it, and then and then becoming self-employed, and kind of being in control of like that aspect of things where you're not like a salaried employee. So for me, I can just go to work and grind, and I'm in control of how much I make. Uh, so I always was kind of interested in real estate in the sense of having rental properties and things like that, and I've done that. I kind of stumbled into it, which is maybe another story. um, but so then buying a house, it was funny. 2 years ago I tried, and I was in like my third year of business. And, when you're self-employed and you're trying to buy a house, they average your 2 years of income. And I had a good year that year, but then the year before was like my first one. So I averaged, I don't know, like 30K profit or something. And I remember the bank told me, they're like, yeah, we can approve you for 25,000. I was like, why would you even respond to my email? I was like, what am I going to do with that? So then a year later, I start the process again, and it's cool. I mean, I've done a lot of work. I think that's the project of having something that, it's a livable house. Don't get me wrong, but it needs updated, right? There's things that need done, and that experience by itself is really valuable. And thankfully, like my dad was he knows how to do all that stuff. He was a contractor, worked in construction for pretty much his entire life, and so I've been learning my way through all this stuff, and with the goal of increasing value, and then maybe it becomes a rental or something like that. And um, I will say, with the way my mind operates, and I feel this way with cars too, is I'm always waiting for something to break. And that has been an exercise by itself of just getting myself to not ruminate over that, because it is going to happen eventually. All you can really do is
Yep.
be prepared. And obviously, with renting, it's different, because if something breaks, you just call somebody and it's not your problem. But then I'll tell you, my heat broke when it was -5 a couple months ago, or last month, and that was like a mental battle for about 3 days of seeing the thermostat in my living room read 40 degrees, and I'm just sitting there in a jacket and a
Yeah.
winter coat.
Not fun.
So
Not fun.
yeah, no,
All right. Well, cool. Home ownership is fun. Real estate's a good thing. I'll tell you my one tidbit of advice I'll give you on that is go look up a company called Replace Your Mortgage, replaceyourmortgage.com, and just learn about what they do. And it's the short version is whatever your monthly mortgage payment is now, you can, if you go down
hmm
and you like learn their course and you understand what they offer, and it isn't cheap, but it is very valuable and worth it. Effectively, you could take what is probably a 30-year mortgage and pay it off in like 10 to 15 years, making the same payments. So it's just a different way to
okay,
think as you're kind of starting your journey a little bit more deeper into money and some of that wealth stuff and everything there. They offer a really good program, and it completely breaks your mind on how to think about money. So the mortgage thing
okay,
is an interesting thing.
sure,
So just for whatever that unwarranted, unsolicited advice might be.
yeah,
But
no, I appreciate it.
yeah, so the health side of things here, the fitness component, ex athletes, I imagine there's very much a world where that person is like, I just don't know what to do. It used to be easy and structure and all of these components, but what are maybe the two or three big problems that are really presented to you on a frequent basis with this clientele coming in? And I ask in such a way to then go down the road of how do we solve those problems, because I know there's a lot of people who are following me who, they have whatever issue they have this thing, and it's just trying to correlate, and if they can learn one thing out of this on how they can make themselves better, then we're just going to be in better spots. So we'll start off with the problems and kind of work our way through it, man.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to former athletes in particular, now I will say before I get into this is like, looking at my client list, there's probably half the people would describe themselves as former athletes. I've worked with plenty that would not describe themselves as that. But I do think the problems are the same. I think they just stem from different things. So, number one, I would say, is the all or nothing mentality, which can be a little bit more prevalent in former athletes, especially people that were higher level, um, because that's what they did before. Like all their main thing was the sport. And if they wanted to go get better at the sport, they would just go do that, or like, go lift, go run, go play the sport, whatever. Um, and now when you're an adult, past college, not playing professional sports, you have other priorities that are in place, right? So you have a job or family, maybe, who knows, whatever else is going on. And then the thought process is almost like, well, if I can't give this my all, then why should I even bother doing it? And in reality, do you really need to be 100% consistent all the time to get results? No, but it feels that way
Yeah.
sometimes. And so getting former athletes to change their mind about what their output actually needs to be in order to get them results and how it also applies with their lifestyle is a lot of what I am a lot of the content in terms of conversations that I'm having with my clients. And so getting them to just kind of like take a breath and be like, okay, I can be 80% consistent and still have time to do all this other stuff and still get results in the gym and it's still worth doing. And then have a routine established that is, beneficial for my mental health, physical health, and is going to get me back to feeling like I was once a high level athlete. Because I do think the fitness like identity like you get from being an athlete is, I think it's important, but it's not really thought about as much. Like when I was a division, like currently in the middle of my Division 1 soccer career, being fit was like a cool byproduct of playing soccer. Like it wasn't something I ever really had to think about because I just got fit from
Sure.
playing. But that's valued by the athletes. Like looking like an athlete is valuable. People enjoy that. But the problem is like the sport. My coach at Pitt, I'll never forget when he said this. He told us one day in a meeting, he was like, "One day your sport's going to leave you. Like it might be tomorrow, it might be 10 years from now, but it is going to leave you. And when it does, there's going to be other stuff that goes away too. So you have to figure out how to keep that stuff without relying on the sport that your time is limited with."
Yeah, it's I never thought of it that way where being active and again I was an athlete, but I would never consider myself like that athlete or whatever in school. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just a byproduct. Like you're at practice for 2 to 3 hours, 5, 6 days a week. And then when you're not at practice, you're still practicing the thing because that's just what you did. Like you put in,
Yeah.
man, 20 hours a week of effort and exercise doing your sport just to be good at it. And now we're trying to convince people to go to the gym like 3 hours a week.
Yeah. Right. And no one, I mean, like, no one, when they're playing their sport, thinks, I'm going out to, I don't know, like just get touches on the ball. They're not doing that so that they
Yeah.
can have abs, you know? Like, it's not connected. It just kind of happens
Yeah.
as a result of doing the sport, which requires fitness. Um, but then the other part about it too is like, you lift for the sport, sport specific training in the weight room as a part of soccer. I mean, we were in the weight room as a goalkeeper. I was in there 4 times a week, some parts of the year. Um, but then there's that aspect of things too. Is like the way you lift as an athlete is not the way you necessarily lift as like like for GPP. Like just as a general person trying to have more muscle
Yeah.
and less fat. And that was something I had to unlearn too because I was always doing like explosive stuff and um, you know, just that whole like I even have some of the programs that we used to do and um, it's a very different like mindset shift because you're like, okay, well, I've been doing it this way for so long. What else
Yeah.
is there? And then lifting like a bodybuilder seems foreign.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like anything you learn, right? Like 20 years ago, carbs were bad, and what do we still face today?
Yeah.
Carbs are bad for you. They make
Uh-huh.
you fat, and the reality is, no, it's weird. Like when I eat carbs, I actually start to lose weight. Like funny how the body
Mm-hmm.
works. So
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so the mindset thing and just that all or nothing mentality. Like if I was going to guess your top three, I don't think I would have even thought about that being a thing to battle, but
Really.
it absolutely makes sense. Yeah, in my mind I would have like the workout thing and the way you work out definitely makes sense. The
Mm-hmm.
the always playing to win and like, going down that road and like just that I'm going to go all out on this thing. Like, I don't know, in my mind you're like, "Oh, I got a job, so my 100% is now 3 or 4 hours a week." Um
Yeah.
so okay. What's the second big thing that you kind of have to battle with people?
So I think that follows that point of the sport leaving you where I made this graph one time. It really illustrated so well. But when I was in college, being at a Division 1 school, everything is structured for you to where you don't have to think about anything. Like we have our entire semester planned from every training session to every lift to every game to when we're leaving for that game to when we come back from that game. And then we had a academic advisor that was assigned to our team to make sure that we're on top of our schoolwork. So and then you have nutrition. Like there's dietitians, and meals are planned, and you know exactly when you're going to be eating. There's food before training, after training. You go into the treatment room, your injuries are taken care of. You know what you're doing, prehab, rehab. Like no stone is left unturned. And then you graduate, and all of that stuff is gone, right? So it's like you went from having everything organized down to the minute, and now you just have an open day. Like you might have, if you're working, you got your 9 to 5, and then what? Like where do you fit all this other stuff in? And so across the board with athletics, like depending on where you're at, like the difference in divisions is mainly resources, and like being at Pitt in Division 1 in the ACC was, you've got all the resources, like everything is there for you. So when you're in that position, now you have to like basically relearn from scratch how to create structure and organization for yourself. And so then what I can do for people is create that structure of like, okay, now you're going to work out 4 times a week. You're going to go for an hour. It's already laid out for you. All you have to do is follow it. So in a similar vein, like what we were doing when we were in college, we had the plan. We just followed it, showed up when we needed to. And now what they're doing with me, same idea. Like they have the plan and they show up when they need to, they do the stuff, and then they get XYZ
Okay.
result.
So it sounds like a lot of potential clients, and like I said, I know you sometimes are not coaching only former athletes, but it sounds like that former
Mm-hmm.
athlete population, like they're generally like lost, or they just don't know where to go or what to do, or
Mm-hmm.
anything there, because it's like the skill that was never learned. You went through a large maturing phase of life, and everything was just done for you because you needed to focus on actually doing the actions. And now,
Mm-hmm.
it's, hey, peace out, see you later, and all of a sudden you got to figure it
Yeah.
all out on your own.
It's a crazy thing too, because we're so, I don't want to say like catered to, because we kind of are. Um, but we also, you learn so much from
Yeah.
playing a sport at that level, like the discipline, just being punctual and like communicating and all that stuff. Like you learn a lot of skills at a very high level, but the one thing you don't get is how to be independent of the sport, because how could you? Like there's never, you're
Yeah.
never off. There's never like even the spring summer, you're still training. It's still, you're still in it. Um and now I will say, there's certain things like, and I can only speak for the University of Pittsburgh, but there's a life skills program which helps with, they do like networking events and job interviews and resume, and like all that stuff is taken care of, which is great. But again, it's still not the same thing as just being
Sure.
on your own.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And what would you say is like the third biggest thing that you kind of have to help people get through?
I think that usually ends up being kind of like I act as a filter. I'll say that. And I think now, it's always been this, like you just said with carbs, there's everyone's saying something different on social media. And I think for people that are trying to do it for themselves, like get a little lost, because it's like, paralysis by analysis a little bit, where everyone's doing something different. Which one do I pick? Which one's going to work? And then no one's patient, and then they do something for 3 weeks and like, that didn't work, so I'm going to jump onto this thing. So for me, I think I act as a filter in the sense of like, all right, I've seen all the information. This is the stuff that I've deciphered works, and I've seen it work, and I've done it for myself. Like I've tried different diets and here and there, just so I can say I have the experience doing this stuff. And I've also been in the gym now for 10 years doing fitness in all kinds of ways. So acting as that filter is like, okay, I've seen it all. These are the things you need to focus on. Do this. It allows people to just relax a little bit. They're not as focused on, am I doing the right thing? Will says it's the right thing. I trust him. I'm going to do it. And then that's what helps them stay consistent. And then it's on me to just help them stay in it and stay patient and feel
Yeah.
supported.
Okay. So, when I think about health as a whole and these, specific issues and whatnot can clearly draw parallels to other populations and whatnot. But what is what is your first, and I know everybody's probably a little bit different, but if we had to generalize, what's the first two or three things that you normally tackle with somebody when they're coming on as a client with you? I'm sure even the people who are not athletes have some general idea of like, hey, here's what I'm going to do, here's the thing I need to focus on, and whatever, if they're getting shit sleep, that's the thing to solve first before you worry about anything else type mentality. So what are
Hmm.
those three things, and why? And this is, again, when I think of the typical person that ends up consuming this, it's I'm hoping, and I'm talking to you guys right now listening in, like this is the stuff you need to help start changing your life, those little incremental moments, right? So what are those two or three things
Hmm.
that usually start people off with, let's make sure we're where we need to be and start kind of making that meaningful progress towards their goals?
Yeah. So I mean, the big rocks is going to be strength training, and then when it comes to nutrition, it's really learning what it means to like eat well and eat correctly. I think, um, and that like even saying that just sounds like an overwhelming explanation because it's like, well, what can that really mean? Um, but the way that I have a funny story to exemplify this. I was at a bachelor party last year in Arizona, and I was on a hike. And one of the guys in the bachelor party was he was a client of mine back when I started. He did like 1 month with me just to get like kind of crash course. Like I was like brand new. And he was saying to me, he was like, yeah, like I really learned how to eat. Like I just had no idea what it meant to eat for, you know, fitness, like to build muscle and not just to eat whatever. As he's telling me this, three guys ahead of me said something like, "Hey, do you remember those cereal bars they used to make that had like I don't know if you know what I'm talking about,
Uh-huh.
the Kellogg ones where they were like it was like Honey Nut Cheerios and it had like milk, but
Yeah.
it was like icing on the bottom." He goes, "Yeah, I found a box of those the other day and I ate all 12 in one day." And I was like, and we just started laughing because we are like, that's literally the example of not knowing how to eat because you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, if you love them and every now and then you just want to make a holiday out of eating a dozen of those, I'd say go for it. But that's not something you can do all the time, right?
I would be so
So,
sick on the other side of that. It'd be such
yeah,
a
right,
stomach
right.
ache.
I know. Crazy. But it's just like those types of things of knowing like what it means to eat balanced, like getting like what are macros? Like what does that actually mean? Like how many calories per gram are in protein, fat, and carbs? How many calories should you be eating across the day? Um, what is do you have to do that all the time? Like people often come in with again all or nothing mentality of being like, okay, I can't eat anything I enjoy anymore because I'm starting working with a coach. And it's like, well, no, not really. You can do it. There's a way, but we just have to figure out what that balance looks like for you. Is there something that you love so much? Like, for example, like a Frappuccino from Starbucks. Like, is that your thing? Do you love that? Do you need it? If so, okay, how do we fit it in? We don't necessarily have to cut it out, you know? So back to your point, strength training, how to eat properly for you in a way that's going to be something sustainable for a long period of time. And then from there, it's like establishing the consistency in your schedule. Is it a busy mom of three that has no time to leave the house and go to the gym for an hour? Is it, a new college grad that was a former athlete that is trying to figure out where to fit in workouts and also meal prep and also eat, throughout a busy day working a 9 to 5? So people often ask me like, what does your coaching look like? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know because I don't know you, And so the that initial conversation is always about, how do we develop those three things in a way that's going to fit this person's
Yeah.
lifestyle?
No, I love that. And I think especially the eating well part and making sure, because and I recorded a podcast earlier. I was talking about the idea of an offer and how to structure in the fact that will help you achieve your goal without necessarily having to give up the food you love. And so many people
Mm-hmm.
believe that, oh, I can't eat these things anymore, or this, I don't know, ice cream, donut, this whatever I know is not healthy, I can't eat it anymore. And the reality is you very much can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to stay strict and work out hard and eat well, if you're in a position where, I don't know, 2,000 calories, just a round number, do you really want to send 600 to 800 calories down the drain on ice cream when you're potentially hungry or something the other, with only getting 1,400 calories of real food? And
Right.
when I first got serious about really diving in on nutrition and understanding that stuff better, that was the biggest thing to me. It was like, I enjoy this thing. And I mean, today I had a slice of pizza for lunch. I was like, I'm way behind on carbs today. I need to get something
Love
in.
it.
So I'm going to have some pizza. I logged it, I tracked it, I did my thing, and I'll still nail my macros and my calories for the day, no problem. It was a good piece of pizza. I enjoyed it, but I'm still staying within my boundaries. But you start to learn, like, wow, I don't want to give up that that taste, or man, if I eat that, I'm definitely not going to feel full, even though I'm going to have calories that make me full. And you start to learn some of that balance
Yeah.
was probably one of my biggest aha moments. And again, I still enjoy my food, but like, is it worth it really comes to the forefront.
Yeah, I think that's the thought process that I think you need to have. It's like, because life is trade-offs, right? And so, I mean, okay, you can go and have that slice of pizza, but okay, well, what does it mean? Like, I mean, what am I, what is that then? How does that impact the rest of my day? Like for, like you said, um, 800 calories, like you think about like fast food. Like I have no beef with fast food. I mean, obviously there's issues with it, but like I don't never eat it because it tastes good. Like, if I every now and then, like I'll go get it and I'm like, hell yeah, this is great. But I also have to keep in mind the implications of what that means. If I'm going to go eat 1,400 calories from McDonald's, then the rest of my day is
Mm-hmm.
basically shot, And so then you have to then say, okay, well, if I'm going to eat this and then eat normally the rest of the day, then I'm probably going to put myself into, maybe a surplus for the day. And then what does that mean? Am I going to freak out over that? No, probably just get back to normal the next day and then we're fine. So I think it's just a lot of it's awareness and education. Once you've got an idea of like what's actually going on, things become very
Yeah.
simple, but that can be hard to
Yeah.
figure
And
out.
like you said, today was a surplus. Okay. Tomorrow, get back to normal. Maybe you have a slight, you come in 100 calories under your goal for 2 or 3 days and try to level it out, but it's no one day crushes you. The average of a rolling seven is a way better way to look at what's going on, because it's
Yeah.
how many times have you had a conversation? Oh, I started, I ate this thing, and I was like, screw it. I just might as well eat whatever I want for the rest of the day. And it's, man, you did three
Yeah.
days worth of damage in that one day now.
hmm there's a lot of reels going around right now. People are doing it's that same notion, but they're like pouring milk into a glass and then missing a little bit, and then just be like, just dump the whole thing on their counter. It's the same idea, But for some reason, when it comes to fitness, we slip up one time, and it's like, I'm giving up. But if you, I don't know, yeah, spill a little bit of milk on a counter, you're not dumping out
Yeah.
a gallon because that sucks. Like, why would you do that to yourself, right? So, but for some reason, we have this stratification between the two.
Yeah. It's, they're not mutually exclusive, but we just compartmentalize them differently. So,
hmm Yeah.
well, cool. I think for me, like, what's a favorite exercise? I always kind of enjoy understanding another fit pro's mindset of like, man, this is my favorite exercise to go do. Not necessarily the one that you like to do the most, which one gives you the most benefit that you love to do, and maybe a
Oh
love hate
wow,
relationship with it, because
no one's ever asked me
I
that
know for
before.
me, like, I'll go in, I'm like, man, I hate doing this, but on the other side of it, I feel really good. Mine, I'll give you an extra few seconds to stall. I love doing just a good, nice, heavy RDL pull, like a nice Romanian deadlift, just
Mm,
pulling that weight up, and
yeah,
you feel good for the rest of the day and just strong. So
yeah. Well, so I have to look at this in the lens of CrossFit because that's what I do. Um, see, like my initial first thought was Olympic lifting. Like I love
yep,
snatches, but I hate them at the same time because they're
yep,
so hard. I've been chasing a 225 snatch for like 3, 4 years now, and I'm like 12 pounds away, I think, but that's a lot in
yeah,
Olympic lifting. Um, but I mean, love hate. I would say anything that's unilateral. So I mean, like lunges, split squats, anything like that. Like I hate doing it, and even my clients will tell me when I program it for them, they hate it. But I'm like, the things you hate are the things that you should do from an exercise perspective. You know, the stuff that's not sexy and cool, like that's going to be the most beneficial for you. You familiar with
Yes.
Corey G? So I mean, he lunges 400 meters every day. I tried doing that a couple years ago when I had tendonitis in my knee, and I thought that would fix it. Didn't, because I know it fixed his. Uh, but yeah, that was. I mean, that like mentally was brutal. But I mean, it's the same idea. Like that sucks, and it's going against the grain, but it's good
Yeah,
for you.
like good old fashioned Bulgarian split squat. I those
Yeah,
just wreck me. It's like,
yeah. My adductors get so sore every time I do those, and like that's been a thing for me squatting my entire life. I don't know why. I can't figure it out, but it never
oh
fails.
man, yeah, that'd probably be a good episode. Just talk about these, like what exercises just wreck your body. Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Well, cool, dude. Where, if somebody's interested in finding out some more information, from you, what you do, how you can help them, where's the best place for them to go and find you?
My website is marshallfitnesstraining.com. I have a list of all of my success stories on there, and then there's a button to apply as well for coaching. It's a little survey. It's like 5 questions, and then beyond that, social media. My Instagram is at willmarshall_1. Same on TikTok. Same on Facebook as well. Instagram is definitely the place to go. That's where I put the most
All right.
content. Um,
Well,
yeah.
cool, man. I appreciate the time. Anything else you want to leave anybody with?
Let me see here. I made a post today about like consistency on it was on Facebook, I think, and I mean to anyone listening that might have that all or nothing mentality. I think the first thing you have to do is understand that you don't need to be. It's not 100 or 0. It's if you can be consistent 80% of the time, you're gonna. It's enough to make changes, and it's also gonna give you it's going to help you establish some habits along the way. It might take you a little longer to get there, and that is the human problem that we have of wanting everything immediately, especially in 2025. So 100%, yeah, might get you some results a little faster, but if you can't sustain it for a long period of time, those results are going to go away. You're going to end up burnout, and you're not going to want to do it anymore. So it's almost like, what is it, 75 hard? Instead of 75 hard, give it 300 days medium and see where you end up. I bet it's a lot more
Love
palatable.
it, dude. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. For you listening in, hopefully you got something out of there. Go make a little bit of a change. 1% better every single day. Compounded is only going to move you 365 plus percent in a year. So keep that in mind. Thanks, everybody.